Good evening, godless sodomites.
We're going to pray, Father in heaven, let your anointing flow out over the airwaves. Let this prosperity anointing, and let them see a mighty miracle and mighty deliverance. In Jesus' precious name I pray.
Think you didn't have any brains at all?
I have so got brains.
Well, why don't you use them?
One thing I've learned is God is Satan himself. They don't realize God don't really matter.
You've tuned in to yet another podcast from the Angry Atheist.
I'm attempting conversation here with you.
You're gonna eat your babies.
You're right on the edge of your miracle. Get ready.
Here he comes.
Amen.
Thanks for tuning into the Angry Atheist podcast. This is like the 9th time I've done this, so please forgive me if I rush through it. I was a guest on a podcast called Post-Rapture Looting this past week. If you would like to go to postrapturelooting.net and find episode number 28, you will hear my wonderful, soothing voice coming to you, along with the guys from Post-Rapture Looting who are doing a pretty good job. So go check it out. All right, this is my shameless plug. And without blabbing on too much longer, I'm going to just dive into this next podcast with Trinity. Trinity has some interesting insights, and they sounded like this. Where are you at again?
Pennsylvania, not too far.
Oh, God, you're in Pennsylvania? I feel sorry for you.
Oh, it's better than where I moved from.
Where's that at?
North Carolina.
Oh, wow, man, you really know how to pick places to live.
Yeah.
Wow, because I was in Pennsylvania not that long ago, and I know some people there, and man, Pennsylvania is just one thing after another.
Oh, yeah, it's bad. We're really having trouble keeping up with being modern.
I figure we'll just jump into it. If you want to introduce yourself to the listening audience, we can just start.
All right. I don't even know what to say about myself. I'm Trinity. I don't really have any official titles or
Good. I like people
awards.
with official titles. They're actually more fun to talk to, people with titles. So I found you actually, Justin Bakula, make sure it's the name right.
I believe so.
Bakula? Yeah, because it's cool. He's cool. He suggested you on Facebook, so that's why you're on the podcast.
Yeah, I started talking to him recently. He's very interesting, very fun to talk to.
He's very very good speaker. He's like he's the opposite of what I am. He's eloquent, and he uses language right, and he's very cordial, and he just has his debating skills are what is it I'm looking for? They're polished, yes. Polished. He has some class when he debates. More of it can be a little more rough around.
Oh, don't worry, I'm right there with you.
It's like you need both types though, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's no reason that just because you're a good speaker doesn't mean that you can't be articulate and you can't be you're not necessarily intelligent or wise or have something that's important to say and hear.
But I'm kind of jealous of him because I don't know he's just able to make the points a little bit in a way I wish I could better. But I just that's the way I can do it. Screw it, accept my weaknesses. And whenever I need somebody to make that kind of argument, I just call Justin to do it for me.
Yeah, that's what he's there for.
Yeah, it's like I'm not a real big biblical. I'm not a scholar,
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the Bible. I've read it, but it was a long time ago, and I don't remember most of it, but I get the gist of it. You know what I mean? I don't need to be able to, to argue it. You don't have to know it by heart.
Well, no, and I mean the people that you're arguing with have never opened one anyway.
There you go. They don't know it. I mean, it's like the billboard they put in Pennsylvania, the one that said "Slaves obey your masters." You know that billboard? Did you hear about that?
Mm-hmm. No, actually, I don't think I did.
There was a billboard they put up that said "Slaves obey your masters," and it was supposed to be a quote from the Bible, and it was a response to the year of the Bible you guys are having there this year.
Yeah,
it was a response to that. But the unfortunate thing about the billboard is it had a picture of a slave on it, a black slave on it, and it pissed a lot of people off, and the racism card got played, and it kind of went the wrong direction. But a lot of the problems that they had with it was people didn't realize that was actually it's in the Bible. It says slaves obey your masters in the Bible.
Well,
part of the anger.
Just the quote, maybe, but picture of a person of color is going a little bit too far there.
That's that was kind of my take on it too. There was a huge issue with that and debate on that, whether it was okay to use that or whether they should have used that as a choice. I personally don't think it was, but I didn't pay the money for the billboards.
Yeah, I mean, technically they can put whatever they want on it, but they have to also deal with the consequences of whatever they put on it.
Exactly. Don't you think it's kind of atheism's at the point where if you're going to make an argument for it, you kind of want to keep the argument from getting watered down by other or distracted by other hot button issues like racism or abortion or things that are going to distract from your point already.
Yeah. I mean, if the argument is whether or not to be atheist or justifying your atheism, which is always really weird to me that atheists are the ones who have to justify, which has always been, I've always had people that I haven't even prompted come up to me and tell me that, and have me justify the Big Bang Theory to them or something like that, because that's obviously part of my creed, and if they can prove to me that it's somehow as ridiculous as believing in God, they'll convert me.
Yeah. And if you can't, then you're just as bad as them, right?
Yeah.
Funny. And it's funny. Do people call or to assume atheism's a religion when they talk to you too a lot, or?
I think so. Well, especially the Big Bang Theory, assuming that I automatically believe in that, like it's somehow some mandated thing by our Lord and Savior, Carl Sagan or something. I don't know. They seem to assume that atheism is its own set of beliefs, where that's exactly what it isn't.
Yeah, it's weird, and I think they need it to be that in order for them to kind of grasp it or understand it. You know what I mean? They need it to be a religion because they can't fathom how it couldn't be. They can't understand how it couldn't be. If there has to be a religion, you've got to be some kind of religion.
Right. You have to believe in something because
it's just because there's stuff here. You got to believe in it because it's here. Like, hey, you got to have furniture in your house because there's furniture. Then why do I have to have furniture? I can live if I want. No, you can't. You've got to have furniture because they make furniture. You've got to put furniture in there. Sorry. I don't want any furniture on the floor. No, you can't. Sorry. It's just like that. It's thinking an argument.
Yeah, that just because something is there, everybody must have it.
Mm-hmm. And you don't believe in God, you must be on the side of the devil.
Right. They don't realize that not believing in Satan kind of goes hand in hand with not believing in God.
Absolutely does. Although you can be a Satanist still, because Satanists don't believe in Satan either. Greed and selfishness. Yeah, they don't actually worship Satan.
Well, yeah, I suppose, but that's the accusation I get, that I do worship Satan.
I know, and it's amazing because it's almost like you've got to be, if you're not this one, you've got to be the opposite. If you're not a Christian, you must be the opposite Christian, which is Satanist.
Right, this false dichotomy that they.
I know, that's funny. We were talking about on the last podcast about the word infidel. I guess I've never heard infidel used very much by Christians, but they said that it was a term that was used by Christians a lot. I don't know. I've never heard it used that way. I
haven't heard it modernly, at least. I mean, I've heard it in plenty of historical contexts.
That might be where they got it from.
I mean, it originally was a word for some, for some. I don't know the exact definition of it, but basically non-believer.
We looked up the definition because we weren't sure either last time. It's a non-believer. It's a non-believer, right? Person.
Yeah.
Non-believer.
So I mean that was a much bigger deal, when they didn't see as much of a problem with killing the ones who didn't believe.
Yeah, I know. If they didn't believe, just kill them. We don't have no use of those people. God can't use them. Get rid of them. So I know that you had some things you wanted to talk about. So subject you wanted to.
Well, one of the problems that I always end up finding when I'm talking to atheists is, and I'm going to use this term as ironically as possible, is we kind of get this holier than thou thing going on, in that we think somehow being secular frees us from a lot of prejudice, and it doesn't. We're still subject to just as much privilege as religious people, and that privilege is not something that we can simply logic away. It's something we're always going to have. We just have to be aware of it and take it and account it into our decisions and think about it when we speak.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be no surprise to anyone that, any atheist convention or speaking even online is very white, hetero, cis male dominated.
Yeah, no shit to that.
And
I realize that, when I'm talking, I'm always aware of that fact. And I think if I'm aware of it, it helps me to, not be that stereotypical just jack off that people are. Sometimes.
Right. You have to kind of put things into perspective, and you have to kind of realize that there are just certain subjects that you shouldn't talk about because you can't have a perspective on them because of that.
Well, you can talk about them. You just shouldn't talk about them like you can understand them.
Yeah,
at the
you
level
shouldn't.
that people are.
You can't talk about them. You can't have a discussion about them, but you can't come out and assert something about them.
Exactly,
You can't.
yeah.
As far as sexism goes, I so many times see men try to tell women that sexism somehow isn't a problem, and I'm just like, no, you can't even speak on that because you're not experiencing it. You're not subjected to it. Go to any atheist video on YouTube, and if it's hosted or primarily somebody who's male, the comments will probably maybe not be entirely coherent, but at least be commenting somewhat on whatever subject they were talking about, probably some incoherent discussion between, the idiots on YouTube who are kind of arguing whether or not God exists back and forth. But if you go to a female YouTuber, all the comments are going, just about all the comments are going to be about her breasts or her body or how she looks, and the discussion is going to take a back seat to that. Yeah. And that's something that a lot of males kind of end up taking for granted, is they are not sexualized in that way. When they speak, people listen, they don't stare.
Yeah, even if they don't listen, it's not reduced to you have a nice ass.
Right.
And I think you're right that, and I know why that is, because the guys are assholes. And that's just my opinion.
Well, it's not even so much being assholes. It's just kind of the way our society has structured itself, and that there's this privilege in their minds where they don't have to think about this.
Yeah, I don't know. I give society some of the blame, but I'd also give the individuals some of the blame.
Well, of course the individuals have some of the blame, but it's just there's these privileges that you just kind of form being a part of the society the way it's structured right now, where you just have these expectations of things conforming to a certain viewpoint and not all viewpoints. Like anything from the male privilege, like a very good example of that, toplessness in public. Like
exactly,
topless, a woman can't, even where it's legal, a woman can't, because she'll be shamed because somebody as a man looking at their body, obviously he can't think of their topless body in any way but a sexual way, therefore it's inappropriate for him to look at them. But it's obviously not at all considered going the opposite way, because women can be just as attracted to a man's chest, or other men in the case of all gender or sexuality minorities.
Yeah, there really is no real difference between the two. As far as if you're talking about attraction, there's going to be an attraction by some, somewhere.
And even we get heterosexual privilege in that, men hitting on women or even women hitting on men is accepted in kind of all areas.
No way. No, there's not heterosexual. What are you talking about? That doesn't exist, does it?
Right, but even among atheists, like if a gay man just kind of starts hitting on a man, just trying to feel something out, he's met with outrage or sometimes
absolutely. Well, he's met with fear mostly, I think, but
right.
Yeah, it just manifests in outrage. But you're right. And you know what? Sometimes what's really sad is that he doesn't even have to do anything that would indicate he's trying to be anything but friendly to a person, and he would get that same...
Right, because we have this expectation that this is only supposed to work one way, and there's only one acceptable way for this to work, because I am a, hetero cis male. Cis meaning, for anybody who, by the way, who's confused, is not trans, a term originating in chemistry, but... And that's even another example of privilege, is like a lot of people, they won't know what that means, and they'll refer to transgender people and normal people, implying that there's somehow some abnormality in there.
Because whatever you are is normal, and what other people are is not normal.
Yes, and that's kind of like the whole idea of privilege kind of coming in there, and that's an example where it's very blatantly obvious.
Yeah, it's I think it's the problem is people, and this applies to everybody, is people tend to think that other people think about things and consider things the same way as they do. And they would behave and react to situations the same way they would. They should have the same opinions as they would, or do have the same opinions as they do about things. If they're offended, other people are offended for the same reasons as they are. And I don't know what the problem is when you can look around and see that people are different than you, but you seem to think that when it comes to thinking about or considering their thinking process, they seem to think that everybody's going to be like them. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, and that's kind of exactly what privilege is just this expectation that other people's thoughts and experiences and reactions are going to be like yours, especially the people who are the majorities or the oppressors in society, so to speak, ones who have the power. And I mean, like, cis privilege. I am trans, by the way, for all of your listeners who did not know that I'm a transgender individual, and so that I'm a white transgender girl. So that obviously affects my privilege in certain ways. I have white privilege. I'm not going to talk about racial issues. But one thing that just absolutely boggles my mind that I get all the time from from a lot of the people I end up interacting with are atheists anyway, is people think it's all right, well, to just come up to me and ask about my genitals.
Yeah, really.
Like
that's classy.
I'll get all the time. So do you have a penis?
Wow. I wonder. Yeah, I'm surprised by that. But then if I think about it, I think about the social. Atheists tend to have, but I don't want to say tend to, but a lot of atheists are socially inept. They don't have any social. They don't have any. They're just not socially at all. And I'd like to think that it was because of that, and because of just ignorance, and they could be, educated so that they would not react that way to people. But I don't know.
No, this is people a lot of times that are otherwise tactful and otherwise.
Really? Okay, that's bad. Yeah.
It's just for some reason trans people are a special case, and you get to ask them about their genitals. If I had come here on the show and just so do you have a penis? Like, how big is it?
Yeah, I just still couldn't imagine feeling like I needed to ask that question, or it would be appropriate. And if I felt like I needed to ask it, would it be appropriate? And I don't think so. It wouldn't be appropriate for anyone.
It's not the trans people are kind of treated as a special case where parts of our body that aren't normally public apparently are.
Public. I was just going to say, parts of your body are just made public by default.
And other people aren't subjected to that same standard.
Yeah, that's a strange one too. I don't know. How do you respond to that kind of thing?
I mean, it depends on the people. I mean, like, I do have some friends who, whatever, they're curious. I'll tell them. I'll usually, explain to them how inappropriate the question was first. But if they're genuinely curious about what's going on with me, I don't really have a problem talking about it as long as I'm in an area where I'm safe. But for the most part, I just, I'll ask people to tell me about theirs first sometime.
That's nice.
Really cocky, or I'll just tell them that it's not any of their business.
It's just wow. It's weird. I've got a weird feeling on that because I'm surprised, but then on the other hand, I'm not surprised because very little people do surprise me. So I got some balls sometimes. Some of the shit they say is just amazing.
Right, and again, the point all here is going back is like atheists are. If you logically think about it, we're like one of the groups. I hesitate to use the word group because we're not really an organized anything. Yeah. We do have some conventions and whatever, but it's not really
generally.
But we're the people who really don't have a reason to be prejudiced against anyone. We don't have a holy book telling us that some people need to be subservient and others don't, and this is wrong and that's right and whatever. We don't have these same reasons to be prejudiced, and I think we kind of for some reason hold ourselves in our mind that we are less prejudiced for this reason, and we're quite obviously not, and it's something we need to step back and look at.
I think you're right. I think that just like we don't need the Bible for our morals, we don't need the Bible for our prejudices either. I mean, each of those kind of learned on our own or dealt with on our own.
And again, like recognizing that we're always going to have these prejudices, we just have to check them. You have to check your privilege when you're going to talk on a subject and make sure that you don't have this mindset that's interfering with your ability to be, to speak on it.
Yeah, you're right. And then we have the intellectual privilege. I think they're, I don't know, it's very strange how atheists are kind of uppity and condescending. So
right, there's that where and that's something I'll admit myself suffer from. I was a little bit of a child prodigy, and I always got very frustrated when I couldn't talk to people, and it's just this. When we got to kind of understand that the average person doesn't understand, they probably would understand symbolic logic if somebody had bothered to sit down and teach it to them, but it's not like something where this baseline modus ponens is just kind of escapes them because they didn't have the same opportunity, they weren't driven in the same manner, and it's not necessarily their fault. It's just the way that we're raising people and teaching people right now.
Yeah, you can't talk down. You shouldn't talk down to people just because they're ignorant on some things, because there's nothing wrong with everybody's ignorant about some things. Everyone,
Right.
It's when they're stupid that's a different problem. But when you're ignorant, sometimes it's unfortunate that they get treated like they're stupid when they just haven't had, like you said, they haven't had the same opportunity to learn about those things, or they haven't had a reason to care about those things, or even learn about them. You know, there's no reason for them to know those things. They couldn't apply them if they did know them anyways. You know, so whether like why do I learn that? Never had an interest.
Right, and then even when they might try to have a discussion about it, and the fact that they're ignorant becomes obvious, and we become condescending. We can't teach them what they need to know. We can't explain to them these things because we're just going to scare people off. Because and it's just a kind of a self-feeding cycle.
Yeah, because once people get treated that way, they're turned off, and that goes for other atheists or religious people too. The same thing. When you have an argument with somebody, if you start the argument with Jesus is a dick, what do you think the conversation is going to go from? Or you're stupid, you don't know anything about Jesus, you haven't, he wasn't born here, he was born here, and you can't make a person look like they're stupid or treat them like they're stupid and expect to get anything from them. Everything you say, even if everything you say is factually correct, even if you have a list of the things that are their favorite things you got from their mother, and you read that off right after you say that, they're going to disagree with that just because.
Right. Because then it becomes about being argumentative, not about
defending them.
Right. You should not force a person into this defensive.
Not right off the bat. You can work up to it. Work up to that later on. Usually with religious people, works up to that. Do you find yourself debating with people a lot, or do you choose not to, or?
Well, not as much anymore, because I'm more selective about the people I end up hanging out with. But it was at one point a really big issue. I mean, like I was baptized Roman Catholic, so I grew up with a little bit of that. My family is very religious. I ended up kind of figuring out on my own in the 3rd grade that I didn't believe in God because it didn't really make sense.
Was there something that you were taught or you saw that you can mark as a kind of hey, maybe that's not true, or is it just like really subtle?
No, it was actually this was the point where I was living in North Carolina, and we had I'm not exactly sure who they were. They were somehow affiliated with a church, and they came to the school and handed out Bibles in the public school. Yeah. And I remember flipping through it, and I'm just like, this all sounds like fairy tale, and kind of like looking at it, I'm just like, I made the same comparison in my head. I'm like, this is like the Tooth Fairy or Santa Claus.
Yeah, or Mother Goose.
Right, and like my parents at the time were in their own, kind of, they didn't tell me about it, but they were at their own junction of starting to question the church, and largely due to like how money obsessed the church seemed to become as they were getting older, and how that just seemed wrong to them.
Yeah.
And then I guess I didn't even tell them directly myself I didn't believe in God, because I didn't know the word atheist in the 3rd grade. I just knew I didn't believe in God. There were phone calls home from the school.
Wow.
The school somehow needed to tell my parents that I didn't believe in God because that was their business.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I wasn't smart enough at the time to keep it to myself while I was, going to a public school in the South. Yeah. It got, there were a couple arguments, but even more than that, it got really bad. Actually, there was a lot of bullying to the point where myself and my friends were physically attacked.
Wow.
Because I was different. I was the atheist kid.
Exactly.
There's a series of 3 days where I came home covered in bruises and limping every day, and the school wouldn't do anything about it. I ended up with post-traumatic stress disorder actually from the whole thing, and so that's my experience.
Yeah.
Figuring out religion and what I believe.
Yeah, because it's bad enough when you're in school if they don't have a reason, they'll find one, make one up, to pick on kids. But once they do have a reason, man, you're all done.
Right, and especially in a school, I mean, they didn't. At least the schools weren't as bad as the schools in South Carolina, where I'm not sure if they still do, but at the time it was the Civil War was still taught as the War of Northern Aggression.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear that in school, but outside of school, I heard it referred to as that several times.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Having these young people just make me feel old. Yeah.
Well, age is relative.
Yeah, I think so too.
On the inside.
Everybody else thought the same way. So, are your parents still religious? Or are they?
No. That's one of the few things that we agree on these days.
Oh wow.
They're no longer religious. My little sisters, I have three little sisters that also that they just kind of ended up, they were baptized, but they were never really brought up being told to believe anything, so coming to their own conclusion, they just didn't believe, because what reason do they have if they, if they're never told to?
I think that's something that's occurring more often.
And I mean that they grew up in Pennsylvania more, so they didn't experience the same level that I did, but they have had people who were not allowed to be their friend when the parents found out they were atheist.
I can imagine that. I live in California, so I'm spoiled. I grew up in California, so we just got way more tolerance out here, man. So we just don't give it. People just generally don't give a shit. Not that they don't care about you as a person, that way in some cases, but they don't care what you're doing. They don't care what they're not hung up on all this weird crap. They're like, Pennsylvania, oh no, you can't play with him, Billy. He doesn't believe in God. He's bad. Just don't see it happening. Weird.
Right. Like I said, for somewhere so far north, we're very oddly like a southern state. We just don't get the nice weather.
I've done a few radio shows talking like with Justin about issues that you guys deal with there, and it's just surreal. The kind of behavior that he talks about. I'm just like, are you making this up? And he's not making it up. It's like weird behavior. I had a guy in one of the bus drivers for the Colts bus line that Justin trying to put a billboard on the side of the buses with just go ballistic all on me on Facebook. Said that he had sex with my sister and all this sort of crazy crap because I was an atheist. I felt kind of bad for him. He can't be. How functional can you be as a human being?
Wait. So you're an atheist. So his response to you being an atheist is saying he had sex with your sister out of wedlock.
We were having a debate over whether it was okay to have God Bless America on the buses.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was part of that debate, and it went to the point where, what else is he going to do? He just has no argument. He has no real argument, so he's going to go to having sex with my sister. That's all he's got, and that's all he's got.
But I don't know that again, is well, incest isn't always against the Bible. Just as has to result in children, and I think you have to get married. But
none of that affects him though. He doesn't consider any of those things. Those don't matter. It's very strange the way loving Christians become so hateful so quickly.
Right.
Easily.
It's very few people seem to approach other people with kind of love rather than hate is usually how I try to approach people these days. It doesn't, it's hard sometimes, but I very much try to prevent myself from hating. It is
challenging. People make it difficult sometimes. You can't even react to things. You try and be respectful to people, and they just don't. They don't want none of it.
Yeah, we actually had on one thing I just couldn't. Justin had on his Facebook something about somebody had given him some things to look over regarding the 9/11 conspiracy.
Yeah.
And there were some truthers I absolutely cannot believe were serious people because they weren't forming coherent sentences anymore. They were just like shouting, typing in all caps these words that were just disjointed.
I know.
And
because they're so flustered.
Not even so flustered. Like it didn't even seem like there was any attempt at forming a sentence anywhere in there. It was just
from the beginning.
It was just like a series of buzzwords that were somehow supposed to have an effect or something.
Yeah, it is almost like that sometimes. Their argument. It's weird. Were they atheists? They were atheists or no?
I honestly don't know. They were truthers. That's all I know. Conspiracy theorists. And
I'm really trying to figure out why there are atheists who are like conspiracy theorists so often. Weird.
Well, again, it's this thing we have to think about that we're not that being an atheist doesn't exclude you from anything else. You can't.
Yeah, I know that, but you would.
It doesn't mean you're not prejudiced. It doesn't mean you're not an idiot. It doesn't mean.
Yeah, I understand that, but you would think that the tendency would be, and it would be a very rare thing. You would hope that it would be a rare thing that they buy in these kind of these conspiracies. And it's not so much that I can't understand why they are. Well, I don't understand why they are, but I can't believe that they exist. But I'd like to know how they come to this conclusion or why they believe in conspiracies, how they come to their conclusions, and kind of see where their logic is either equal to how they consider religion or how it's different. You know what I mean? How they apply it differently.
Yeah. I had an argument recently with a person I just no longer can speak to that it started out as well, one, he was trying to convince me that women had it better than men in the United States, and that really pushed my buttons. He didn't believe he didn't believe in the whole the thing that was being reported on in the news all the time right now, the pay difference, the women making I think the 78 cents to every dollar or something like that. And then it gets worse as intersectionality comes up and you have women of color One, he absolutely didn't believe that even after I showed him several sources, and then went on to like somehow that voting was controlled by the Spanish because the voting machines are made in Spain.
Oh yeah, that's
or something.
Wow.
And he was talking about how ignorant could I possibly be, and to open my eyes, and we got onto the subject of the pyramids being made by aliens.
Oh no, not this. I've talked about this. That's funny because that's been brought up a couple times this week by
But like, I don't even understand how we got on that subject, because he just kind of started talking, and his logic brought him from women to voting machines to aliens in about 4 minutes.
Yeah,
and just telling me that I was absolutely ignorant. He's like, well, if it wasn't aliens, then how did they get there? And I'm just like, that's okay. I'll admit that at least at one point, I think recently we have figured it out. I don't remember exactly what the explanation was, but it did confuse us a little. But that doesn't automatically mean aliens.
Yeah, you don't default to aliens. It's like ghost hunters or paranormal people default to ghosts for every strange sound they have. I don't understand how people can come to that. I mean, why would aliens build pyramids or help us build pyramids? Why would they build us? That's crap. Why would we build those things? To what end would we build pyramids?
And just to think about like all the technology that's involved in interstellar travel,
exactly. The best thing they can come up with is pyramids.
To have somebody survive traveling from one solar system to another.
Yeah.
Or I guess, I don't know. Maybe he thought they were just on Mars. So it was only a few months Earth time.
Yeah.
But just
could be.
Of all the things that they are going to do, they're going to help some people in a desert build a triangle.
Yeah.
And
rocks. It's like, yeah, it's not even like it was alien, metal.
Right.
It's just rocks.
and I don't know, I was even trying to be reasonable with him. I just like, do you have any proof or documentation that indicates it might have been aliens? And he's just like, well, how else did they get there? And I just,
that's stupid.
One, I don't even know why I was having the discussion with him, because like that's how his logic just worked. Is that arguing with him some point, go back to yelling about the pyramids being built by aliens, and just default to that every time. And
it's going to be difficult to have any kind of conversation to produce any results with a person. Just like you said, well, they could have come from Mars. Well, yeah, with that kind of person, you very well could have been. He thought the aliens actually did live on Mars.
Right, yeah. And which he never explained, like, because I brought up the problems with interstellar travel and how much time that would take and how much fuel and navigation just be like, there's all sorts of problems that we're very aware of that when it comes
limit that ability a lot. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird when people, I don't know. I find it entertaining sometimes, but I can't. It's just
it's entertaining when you can sit back and just be a bystander, and you're not the one who actually has to deal with the person yelling in your ears.
Yeah.
And like, especially because this was a person I had known for a while and I considered a friend. I didn't know that they were this.
Oh, really?
Crazy. Like the person I played a lot of video games with and had been playing with for well over a year, and then this just kind of came out all of a sudden, and I was really confused.
So, do you still talk to this person, or are you happy with?
No, I'm not there's certain people I won't deal. There's no reason. I obviously can't get through to him with any kind of logic if he's just going to default. Like there was absolutely no reasoning with him. Is that apparently I was being ignorant was the thing that he just kind of kept shouting over and over again.
If you don't agree with them, you're just reason
right. And I mean, like what I was asking him, I literally was just asking him for some kind of documentation, some kind of proof. Show me a website that indicates this with some kind of reliable proof. Like okay, fine, I'll give you. Maybe there's it's mysterious how they were built, but that doesn't, But if you're going to assert that they were built a certain way, you have to have some kind of proof for that.
Something, anything that backs your position would be
right.
reasonable.
And I was just asking him for anything. Meanwhile, like on the women's discussion, I gave him all kinds of links to to different statistics and whatever.
That was easy one to show too. I mean,
right. And he started trying to get into little semantics of language that he didn't understand. Language actually being where the entire argument started. And it was Are you familiar with what the term rape culture means?
I don't.
Rape culture is this kind of it's another problem that it's very specific, specifically a problem in gaming communities and things like that. But it is a problem all over where we kind of use the word rape really casually.
Yeah.
And it is really, really problematic. Language is one of my soapbox. When I was at school, I was studying to become a cognitive scientist, which
kind of like the words retard and gay, right?
Right, exactly. Which I actually wrote a whole. I'm writing a series of essays on language on my blog that are that are relevant to exactly how we process language and why this is damaging and why being insulted or offended by these things isn't wrong.
Yeah.
Because that's always the argument, is you don't have thick enough skin or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But rape culture is just kind of like in video games, you'll just kind of hear people going over and over, we raped them. Oh, we got raped in that game. And it's just like, underreporting of rape is such a huge problem. I mean, there's not even good statistics on it, but most conservative statistics say as many
more
as
than
half
there should be would be a good statistic there. It's more than there should be, obviously.
Right. Well, I mean, like conservative statistics will say above 50% of rapes are never even reported to the police, and so like it's just because of this attitude that we have towards it, and again, it's one of those things that atheists are not at all excluded from, because like I said, I usually surround myself with people who don't. Who are somewhat like-minded. Obviously, I find out that they can be a little bit crazy, but I've had people try to rationalize using this language with very, somewhat logically thought out arguments. He's like, oh, well, context, it obviously doesn't mean that, and whatever it is, and then, so people who can be very rational seem to think that using these words in these manners is somehow okay. And it's very much not.
Now, does a word ever get to the point where its definition has changed to so many people where it's not damaging? I mean, obviously you have to be.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, the rape is actually an example of that, where the definition has completely. I mean, it used to basically mean like pillaging the countryside or something like that.
Yeah.
To mean, anything sexual, and so definitions do change over time, but the problem is that you have to basically completely not have that other definition, because when the way that we construct language is top down. We kind of have this idea of what we want to say in a sentence, and then look for words that fit those definitions. But when we hear a sentence, we get the words first, and we have to pick definitions that fit for those words that make sense. And what we find is when we study this, is that no matter the context, we actually prime all definitions of a word mentally equally. So especially like the word gay, hearing gay to mean bad or stupid all the time actually creates this mental association that gay is bad or stupid. In all contexts, you constantly get this association going on, and it's so bad for people's self-images. It's so bad for society's
social interaction,
because you get this subconscious association that shapes your opinions,
and you're not even aware of it in many cases because you don't think anything.
And over again, people, whether they're secular or not, will just say over and over again, well, you just need thicker skin. I obviously didn't mean it that way.
Yeah, really obviously to you,
Right, because you're the one constructing the sentence. You're looking at it from this top-down perspective where you're only considering one definition. But
and
when
definitions
a person interprets a sentence, they don't even realize it, but they're priming all definitions in their mind. So both of those pathways are lighting up at the same time, and it works this way with all words. It's not. And I mean, like, obviously for some words that have multiple definitions, it's not at all harmful, but we create these subconscious associations that we should not have.
It creates misunderstandings a lot of times, and I've always made a point that when you're going to debate people, you need to have the same definitions for those words, or agree on definitions for those words, at least so that you understand how the other person defines the words, or it's pointless to have a discussion.
Right, if you can't even understand what one another are talking about because there's a simple miscommunication in definition, you could be arguing the same exact thing and not know it.
Exactly. Go nowhere, argue for 3 hours and go nowhere, and you never even disagree with each other in the first place because you didn't know it. I think definitions are that one thing screws people up as far as what you're talking about, and in debating,
Right.
Definitions are you've got to have the same. If you don't think of things or define things or look at them in at least a similar fashion, or in a way at least the other party knows, that you look at it. If you see blue as kind of a more teal, then the other person needs to know that so that they can form an argument that you will be able to understand and respond to.
Right. There's absolutely no point if you don't even know what the other person is talking about.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah. That point cannot be made often enough, I don't think, these days. Well, considering the people that I deal with, the arguments I'm constantly having with people, you cannot make that point strongly enough. I see so many times people arguing with each other, and I can see they're not arguing about what they think they're arguing about, looking from the outside. Stop doing that, continuing it on and then it gets ugly and it gets nasty and it falls into a bunch, it just snowballs.
Right, and even I find I can't even think of an example off the top of my head, but I've definitely had arguments like that where I'm just like, okay, slow down. What exactly do you mean by this term? And they're just like, how could you not know? And people get very frustrated, it seems, when you just ask for a simple clarification, just so that you can know what you're talking about before you start.
Yeah, I think
making
the word
points
God,
on it.
The word God is one that.
Right, which is so commonly accepted to be the Abrahamic God rather than just any kind of God. But I'm sure you've discussed that often enough.
It could mean endless things, Right? And I just think it's weird how many even atheists just don't even consider that when they just default to this definition or this application of the word, and sometimes it makes them look like idiots because they're arguing with somebody about God and they think they're talking about the Christian God, and they're not talking about the Christian God. They're talking about something totally different. What do you think about politics? I'm sure your feelings.
Politics are bad. There's no one I can really agree with. I'm as far to the left as you can get, and we don't actually have any politicians on the left that I can think of off the top of my head. We have right and then slightly less right. Is really what people don't, I think, realize when we get in politics. What we call left is actually just slightly less right. And I mean, I obviously being part of the GSM community, I think we end up seeing a lot more problems than other people in terms of things like healthcare. Healthcare for people in the GSM community. There's such a huge disparity. It's not even. It's ridiculous how hard it can be to get treated. I actually have to drive 2.5 hours away to see a doctor. I have a physical illness. That's why I'm not in school right now. I said I'd started school, but I didn't finish. A little bit too ill to go back, and so I obviously that colors my opinions on healthcare and whatnot. But I feel like I'm intelligent and I have a lot to contribute to society. I just don't have the means by which to do so because I can't afford to go to school while I'm sick.
I think it's a shame in a country that has this much wealth in it that we have issues. People should be able to get medical attention, medical care. It shouldn't be a big deal. It shouldn't be this difficult for us to achieve. It shouldn't be this kind of debate over it.
And then as well as simple things like housing.
Exactly. Those types of things should be a given.
Right. I mean, like we have so many houses in the United States right now that are just completely unoccupied, and we could easily just using the unoccupied housing house everyone in the United States easily. We could easily feed everyone with the amount of food that we produce.
You're goddamn right we could, and we should be doing that. There's no reason why anybody in this country should be hungry at all. There should be some basic it's a shameful thing.
I'll say I am a socialist. I don't.
I'm a socialist.
Right, I mean, I just feel people, that people should be able to get what they need. People should always be able to get what they need.
Yep. And you know what? The government isn't the one that should be. I mean, not that they should be or shouldn't be, but you should have people caring enough about other people, and there's enough to go around providing for people who have less than them, not because that they're lazy, because there's no fault of their own. They need help,
Right. I mean, I don't consider myself a lazy person, but I cannot. I cannot hold a job because I'm sick. I can't. I'm tired all the time. I'm in pain. I cannot. I cannot guarantee what days of the week I'm going to be awake. So there's absolutely no way I can hold down a job. That doesn't mean I'm not intelligent. That doesn't mean there aren't things I could contribute. But I need a starting point, and it's like even getting on welfare is impossible.
Yeah, it sucks. A lot of people are critical of that. And it's like I have a son who's disabled, and I've had people say he was a burden, that he needs to pull his weight, and he can't control his muscles in his body. He can't feed himself. He can't speak. What kind of job do they expect him to get?
Right. And how can you ever morally justify not allowing that person to live or allowing that person to go hungry or to have to sleep on the street?
Or you're lazy, you know? What the fuck is that? Oh, you're lazy?
We have this. The American dream is like this kind of pounded into our heads, and it's a complete fantasy. This idea that by simple force of willpower we can achieve anything, and which goes into a whole thing with mental illness. That mental illness is something you can just will away, so that doesn't interfere with people's lives in a real way at all.
And you know what? Mental illness is running rampant in this country. No treatment for the people who need it,
Right, that was actually a thing I was just on Justin's podcast. He interviewed somebody that's doing a whole secular therapist thing. I think it was recoveringfromreligion.org.
Oh yeah, I've had some.
So that whole thing.
Yep.
But yeah, we just we have this whole stigma against all of it, and that just this inclination that we can just will whatever we want.
You're not trying hard enough. You're not trying hard enough.
Right, I mean, just imagine if we treated all illness in this country like we treated mental illness. Oh, you don't actually need your insulin for your diabetes. You're not trying hard enough.
Yeah, really. Chemotherapy? Nah, you don't need that.
Right. You just need to get up and walk it off.
Yeah, walk it off, exactly. Shake it off. Come on. Shake off those cancer cells. Exactly right. Ridiculous to say that, but that's exactly... They're doing the same thing, It's a good example. People just don't get it. The mental health care system in this country, I don't even like to think about it because it bothers me so much how weak it is and how many people could use help and would benefit from just a simple, just seeing somebody once in a while, just talking to someone once a week.
Just talk therapy it can be so effective and it's something that people have to be scared of people finding out they're doing, and as well as this is another thing that happened while I was going to school in North Carolina. There's one point where the school thought I was suicidal. I was telling a joke and someone missed the punchline or something. I don't know. It was a stupid little kid thing. But the school thought I was suicidal, so they sent me home, and I wasn't allowed to come back to the school until I had approval from a therapist or a minister. And it's just like this whole misconception of what actually, what mental health is, and that we kind of give a lot of people way more credit in the field than they should have. For example, clergymen of whatever variety. That they're not therapists, they're not trained, they're not.
A lot of them are.
Yeah. The only training they supposedly have is in terms of religious issues, and mental health is not a religious issue. It affects a lot of people for any number of reasons, and.
The Bible isn't really a really good educational tool when you're talking about psychology. It's not really
right. There's I imagine that a lot of people, if they came out of a lot of people coming out of the Bible wouldn't be very very well off mentally.
I was going to say there's probably a majority of the people written about in the Bible or who wrote the Bible have issues that could have been dealt with. My opinion.
Right, and I think we also have this issue where people don't seem to think that it's that we have more problems than we used to, or it's simply we're understanding them better. It's not like depression is a sudden new thing. It's just finally understanding what it is and how it can be treated and how to improve people's lives. Yeah, people got on before we had these treatments, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be working to improve our quality of life.
Exactly.
I mean, people got on before the internet, but we obviously have accepted that pretty quickly. People got on before planes and before, global commerce, but we obviously like that a lot.
Yeah. It's funny how you mentioned people think things are happening more often. Same thing with just news events. Whenever something happens, they're going, oh, wow, that seems to be happening an awful lot. Well, the world's become a lot smaller.
Right. Is that we can hear about, I think there were 2 plane crashes in 2 days, and I remember a lot of people being like,
a lot of planes are crashing.
Right. And well, I mean, when you factor in all the different planes and all the different countries, however much, maybe 2 in 2 days is still a lot, but it's not nearly as much as people think it is.
I know. Yeah. They were talking about that on the news the other day about something had fallen off a plane or something, a door or something had fallen off a plane. And they talked about these other instances in the past. This has happened in the past. It's happened like maybe 3 or 4 different instances, and they're acting like at any moment you better watch out because something might be falling on your head. And I'm thinking about, do you know the number of planes that fly over the sky in this country every single day is incredible.
Right.
Incredible amount. I live in the Bay Area, and I've got 3 airports around me. There's a plane in the sky. You know what? There's more. There's a time you can't see a plane somewhere in the sky. It's just, and they act like, oh no, watch out, it might fall on you at any moment. It's gonna break with it.
Right, and I mean, the only things that are really happening that much more often is things to do with stuff like climate change, which, of course, if you're talking to people who are that far to the right, doesn't exist. and yeah, but I mean, we very much noticed that weather patterns are being a little bit different, but that's because that's something that we have had. I mean, what we haven't had. It's not like we have as short of a history with weather as we do with planes, where to put things in perspective, and we have it. It's been fairly well documented for a long time before we even had technology. People were writing things down.
Yeah. All right. You know what? We're out of time.
All right.
Do you have any parting words you'd like to leave the listening audience with before
Mostly check your privilege. Just make sure you know where you're coming from when you talk about something.
It's good advice. Check yourself. And that goes for everybody too. Especially goes for the people who don't think they need to.
Exactly. That's where it's most important. Everybody needs to. So if you find yourself thinking that you have absolutely zero prejudice, you're the person who really needs to think about what you're talking about.
Yeah, you need to think about it the most. Sorry, it's the way it is. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me. It's a good conversation.
Oh, no problem. It was fun.
Yeah, deal. And I'd like to thank Trinity for hanging out with me for an hour and having a little chat. It was enjoyable. The hour went by fast. And I'd like to thank you for listening and remind you to please share the podcast with the other people that you know, and please share it with people you don't know and people that you wish you knew better. I think that covers everybody. Okay.